You know, there are days I just ask myself sometimes, am I the King of England? For it is I who possess the one and only Holy Grail. Yes, none other than Fortress Maximus, considered by many collectors to be their firstborn. And a camera hog! Dude, this is my show. So this review was requested of me by Zero Online, asking me to review Fort Max when he said, "Review Fort Max!" And automatically sensing the young man's passion for the toy, I accepted his challenge. And here we are. This particular unique individual is what you would call an average Fort Max. Nowhere near mint, but hey, still better off than being used for spare parts. This big bastard has faded or worn stickers, missing parts and accessories, and his plastic's turning that shade of yellow like your uncle's teeth, but you don't talk about it, because he's that kind of uncle. The one you don't like mentioning. But still, luckily for me, there's enough of this guy intact that it remains over-the-top fun. In between cuts, I flipped a coin and it came up heads, so that's where we'll start. So, as if you didn't already know this by now, Fortress Maximus, double headmaster. He comes with two cranial companions, one being Cerebros, and the other unfortunately being the one I don't have, Spike. For those lucky few that still have a Spike to go with their Fort Max, they're able to duocon him up with their Cerebros and form a neck, stump, and head combination robot. Only kind of one use there. Look, I'm not saying it's a bad thing that Cerebros transforms into a head. I'm just saying this isn't Decap Attack for the Sega Genesis. You're not going to see Fort Max hurling his noggin around to knock out enemies. A triple changing headmaster? You have any idea how drastically that would improve play value? I mean, look at this. I was fooling around with Cerebros for like a minute, and I managed to turn him into like an AT Walker from Star Wars, or that killer robot from the first RoboCop movie. But alas, he just remains the head component of Fort Max, with red eyes. Why does he have red eyes? I thought he was an Autobot. And unfortunately, robot mode is all the worse for wear because I don't have any of his accessories. And his head counts as an accessory. No Spike Headmaster, no gun, and if this was the Japanese release, no Master Sword for Cerebros. He really needs his toys. Without him, he's less Autobot and more kamikaze suicide bomber from Serious Sam.
Oh my god! Back up, back up, back up. Don't stop backing up. Can you headshot something without a head? I'm gonna try.
I don't know. It's a cool gimmick, but I think a weak aspect on Fort Max. I mean, the dude's name alone makes me think of three-headed dogs in that big round room from X-Men. And oh my god, the paradoxical loop this thing gets me stuck in. He's a robot with no head that transforms into a head. But somehow the robot doesn't have a head, even though he transforms into a head. But yet the robot doesn't have a head, except he transforms into a head. But the head can't go on the robot because he transforms into the head, leaving the robot headless. And because the robot's headless, he doesn't have a head even though he transforms into one. And then when he transforms back into a robot from a head, he still doesn't have a head. And then the head goes away when he transforms into a robot, and then the robot doesn't have a head. Why doesn't the robot have a head? I don't know. Well, he transforms into a head. Can he wear his own head? No, he can't wear his own head. He needs to transform into a head for another robot. Wait a minute, this robot turns into another head for a robot even though this robot itself doesn't have a head? Yep, that's right, this robot doesn't have a head. Where's his head? It's missing. Well, let's transform to a head, put him on here. Can't do one the same. So this robot transforms into a head for another robot. Doesn't have a head itself. Wait, back up. Say that again. This robot doesn't have a head. You transforms into a head? Yep, can't wear this robot transforms into a head. I can't figure it out. Can you? No, this robot. He doesn't have a head. He transforms into a head. He has a head. Please have a head. I'm gonna put you back there so I can stop thinking. Alright, we are ready to move on after I lie down for a bit.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
Head on! 強敵メガザラックスを倒せ。トランスフォーマー最大の戦士フォートレスマキシマス。
We now return to the Transformers.
If you thought paradoxical loops were loads of fun, well then you haven't stared at a Fort Max recently, have you? At first, you might start to notice small things, like that classic rub sign right below Fort Max's head, which has a giant Autobot emblem right below that. Some might call that redundant. I call that a genius word I can't think of right now, but I'll get back to you when I know what it is. And then of course there's that dubious placement of the crank, which I'm sure some third-party company is working hard at to rectify. But I'm guessing Hashtag added this feature just because they thought it would look cool. But he also has a fold-away helicopter pad, even though he doesn't have any helicopter accessories. Okay, you're cleared for landing. Good luck getting anywhere on this guy. It's currently in robot mode. Kinda hard to get around. Oh, and if there was ever any wonder where the name Fortress Maximus came from, it might have originated from this giant photon rifle, this double-barreled laser cannon, these two waist-mounted twin cannons of overkill, or possibly the flip-out Dillinger-style hidden weapons in both his hands and his arm biceps. Which are the weapons you see immediately? Because if you were to look lower, then you would see the leg-mounted giant double-barreled red lasers of death and the one on the helicopter pad. Jesus criminy, this guy makes Neo walking into that government lobby look subtle. I mean, hell, there might even be some who argue that the name for the Titanic robot comes from his alt mode, which is supposed to be an entire Autobot city. I mean, yeah, I can see what they're talking about. It's got repair bays and jail cells and garages and streets and hyper-launching streets and helicopter pads with firepower. So I can't concede this is cool and all, but it's still missing that certain something. Namely the two combining robots that fit into the foot spaces of Fort Max, Gasket and Gromit. You know, looking at this particular transformation in retrospect makes me wonder something. Did Fort Max scan and replicate a city for his alt mode like all the other Transformers do? Is this supposed to be Paris? Seattle? Tokyo? That one city in Canada that has a tower and was featured in the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie? Where in the world is Fort Max? Well, even though I'm missing accessories, I still can't call this a complete review without showing you the third and final mode of this giant behemoth triple changing transformer. The Starship mode, which kind of looks like one of the ships from the Starship Trooper movie. See, doesn't that kind of look like the tower that got smashed with the asteroid and sent Rico's girlfriend careening down the planet M? Or Klaatu, something like that. I can't remember now. It's just an elongated robot. But wow! What an elongated robot! I mean, someone play Thus Spake Zarathustra. Cause look, it's still going. But really, is there something I've said here you haven't heard by now? Come on, it's Fort Max. You owe it to yourself as a collector to get one of these. Or at least a Brave or a Grand. For these marbles truly are holy grails, and no price is too much to pay for one of them. You do want to be the King of England, don't you? Don't you?